In the dead of night, a family's screams are drowned by the crackling of flames. Trapped in their burning home, with no way out and time running out, who will save them? When the fire seems unstoppable, one neighbor, Keanu Reeves, takes a chance and races into the inferno, risking everything to rescue the family. But will he make it in time, or will the flames claim more than just their home? It was a quiet evening in the small neighborhood, the kind where people usually felt safe in their homes. The stars above twinkled peacefully, and the cool breeze swept through the trees. But in one home, a nightmare was unfolding. Inside, the Williams family was finishing up their evening routines. Sarah, the mother, was putting her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, to bed, while her husband, James, was in the kitchen, preparing their dinner. It was a typical night until the unmistakable smell of smoke filled the air. Sarah paused, looking around the room, her heart racing. "James!" she called out, her voice trembling. But before she could get an answer, the smoke grew thicker, and a loud crack sounded from the living room. A fire had started somewhere in the house, an invisible force moving fast, spreading like wildfire. Within seconds, flames began licking at the walls, casting an eerie orange glow over the room. The house, once a place of comfort, was now a raging inferno. "James!" Sarah screamed, running toward the kitchen, only to stop dead in her tracks. The hallway to the stairs had become engulfed in flames, blocking their only escape route. Her chest tightened, panic setting in as she realized there was no way out. Lily, who had been sitting on her bed, wide-eyed with fear, began crying, clutching her stuffed bear tightly. "Mom! Dad! I'm scared!" "Stay calm, Lily!" Sarah shouted, trying to hide her own fear as she rushed to her daughter. She picked her up, cradling her in her arms. "We need to get out of here now!" But the fire was moving too quickly. The heat was unbearable, and the air was thick with smoke. As Sarah looked around, her thoughts raced. Her husband, James, was somewhere in the kitchen, but there was no way to reach him through the flames. Just as the smoke grew heavier and the walls began to crack under the pressure of the fire, a figure appeared in the doorway, a man who lived 2 houses down. Keanu Reeves had been in his own home when he saw the glow of the fire. Without hesitation, Keanu rushed forward, pushing through the heat and smoke. He could hear the frantic calls from inside, and he wasn't going to wait for the firefighters. He had to act, and he had to act fast. Keanu didn't hesitate for a second. As soon as he saw the smoke pouring from the windows, he dashed toward the Williams house, his heart pounding in his chest. He was no firefighter, but he wasn't about to stand by while a family was trapped in a burning home. He reached the front door and found it locked. Without wasting time, he kicked it open with a single powerful shove, the wood splintering under his boot. The air was thick with smoke, and the heat was suffocating. Keanu could barely see through the haze, but he heard the frantic sounds of someone calling for help from upstairs. "Sarah," a voice cried out, barely audible over the crackling fire. It was James, the father. Keanu didn't waste any time. He darted up the staircase, his instincts guiding him. The heat was unbearable, and each step felt like it could be his last. But the thought of a family in danger pushed him forward. When he reached the top, he saw Sarah standing in the hallway, her face pale with fear, holding Lily tightly in her arms. "We can't get out," she cried, her voice breaking. "The fire's blocking the way." Keanu's eyes scanned the hallway. The fire was closing in fast, the walls burning and the ceiling starting to sag. He didn't have much time. "Follow me and stay close," Keanu said, his voice steady trying to hide the fear that had started to creep in. He turned quickly, moving toward the back of the house. There was another way out, through the kitchen and the back door, but the path was quickly becoming impassable. As he reached the kitchen, the flames roared around him, making the air unbearable to breathe. Keanu turned and found James, who was struggling to find an escape. The smoke was thick, and his eyes were red from the stinging fumes. "James! This way!" Keanu shouted, grabbing the man's arm and pulling him toward the back door. But as they neared the exit, a loud crash echoed behind them. The ceiling above them groaned under the weight of the fire, and part of it collapsed, blocking their way. The door was now completely unreachable. Sarah's terrified scream cut through the chaos. "Keanu! We're trapped!" There was no way out through the back. Keanu's mind raced. He looked back toward the front door, too far away. But then, a flash of inspiration hit him. The window in the living room. It wasn't ideal, but it was their only chance. "Follow me!" he yelled again, pushing past the choking smoke, his heart hammering in his chest. He led them back through the hallway, each step feeling more like a race against death itself. They reached the living room, the fire now completely engulfing the walls. Keanu grabbed the windowsill and pried it open. The heat was unbearable, but the window was their only chance. "Go!" Keanu ordered, lifting Lily out first and passing her to Sarah. He didn't have time to think. Every second counted. Sarah helped Lily climb out, her hands trembling as she looked back at the inferno raging behind them. "James! Go!" Keanu shouted, pushing him toward the window. The father hesitated for a moment, but Keanu was already climbing through himself, turning back only to make sure everyone was following. There was no time for fear, no time to second-guess. Finally, they were all outside, standing in the yard, watching as the fire consumed their home. The heat still pressed on their backs, but they were safe, barely. The flames roared around them, but Keanu stayed calm, guiding them away from the building as the fire engines screeched down the street, sirens blaring. The family was safe, but the damage was done. Their home was lost. Yet, in that moment, they knew they owed their lives to the one man who had rushed into the flames without a second thought. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face as she hugged her daughter close. Keanu gave her a quiet nod, not needing the thanks. He had done what anyone would have done in his place, but deep down, he knew he would never forget the feeling of saving a life, especially when the flames had been so close to taking everything. The fire trucks arrived with blaring sirens, their lights flashing in every direction, casting an eerie red glow across the neighborhood. As the firefighters rushed to battle the blaze, Keanu stood at the edge of the lawn, his eyes fixed on the U, home that had once been a safe haven for the Williams family. Now, it was just a pile of smoldering ruins. He didn't speak. His actions had been quick, instinctive, but now, in the aftermath, he felt a quiet weight in his chest. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of what he'd just done began to sink in. It had been close, too close. James, still in shock, stood beside him, staring at the house. I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. Keanu gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "No need," he replied simply. "Just glad you all made it out." Lily, still clutching her stuffed bear tightly, looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes. "Are we going to be okay?" she asked, her voice small. Keanu smiled gently at the little girl. "You're safe now. That's what matters most." He crouched down to her level, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The firefighters will make sure. Everything's taken care of. You just focus on staying safe." But before they could say more, a firefighter approached, his face grim. "We've got it under control now. The house is gone, but the important thing is you're all safe. We'll do what we can to help." James nodded, his gaze still distant. "I don't know what we would have done without you," he said again, his gratitude unmistakable. "You came out of nowhere." Keanu's eyes flicked to the smoke still rising in the distance, the remnants of the fire still swirling in the cool night air. "Sometimes you just need to be in the right place at the right time," he said quietly. "You're lucky it wasn't worse." Sarah, still holding Lily tightly, turned to Keanu with teary eyes. "We'll never forget what you did for us. You saved our lives." Keanu just gave a nod, his usual calm composure never wavering. "No need for thanks. I did what anyone would have done." As the night wore on, emergency responders began to sift through the remains of the house, taking inventory of what had been lost and what could still be salvaged. The family stood together, grateful but shaken, as Keanu quietly slipped away, disappearing into the shadows of the night, as he often did when his work was done. Before he disappeared completely, Lily's voice called out to him. "Wait!" she shouted, her small hands reaching out to him. "Thank you, Mr. Keanu." Keanu turned, meeting her gaze with a soft smile. "Take care of each other," he said, his voice gentle. "And don't forget, you're stronger than you think." And with that, he turned and walked away, fading into the darkness as the Williams family stood together, knowing that without Keanu's quick thinking and bravery, they might not have made it out alive. Epilogue. The Williams family eventually rebuilt their lives. They moved into a new home, but the memory of that fateful night and the man who saved them stayed with them forever. Every year, on the anniversary of the fire, they would send a thank you card to Keanu's address, though they never received a reply. The note simply read, "You are the reason we are still together." The family would always remember that hero who risked everything for them. No fame, no recognition, just a quiet hero who did the right thing when it mattered most. Months passed, and life gradually returned to a sense of normalcy for the Williams family. They had settled into their new home, thanks to the kindness of their community and the insurance that helped rebuild what the fire had taken. But every now and then, Sarah would glance at the spot where their old home once stood, and her heart would ache with the loss. Still, they were alive, together, and that was all that mattered. Then one autumn afternoon, as the family was finishing their dinner, there was a knock at the door. Sarah opened it, surprised to see a delivery man standing with a package in his hands. "This is for you," he said, handing her the box. "Who's it from?" Sarah asked, curious. The delivery man shrugged. "There's no return address, just your name." Puzzled, Sarah took the package and brought it inside. As she carefully opened it, the contents inside took her breath away. There was a framed photograph of their old home taken from the street during the fire. The picture captured the exact moment the flames had been raging, the sky above filled with smoke. But what stood out most in the image was Keanu. In the background, standing heroically outside the burning house, was Keanu Reeves, his back turned, looking at the flames as he made sure the family was safe. At the bottom of the photo, written in small, elegant handwriting, were words that made Sarah's heart swell. "To the Williams family, you will always have a second chance because of your loved and brave. Take care of each other. Keanu." Sarah blinked back tears as she stared at the photo. For months, she had wondered about Keanu, the man who had saved them, but he had disappeared just as mysteriously as he had appeared. Now she understood why. He had never wanted recognition. He had simply wanted them to know they were loved, and that there was someone who would always be there when they needed help. Meanwhile, Keanu, wherever he was, had left his mark on their lives in a way words couldn't describe. He had given them more than just a second chance. He had given them hope. Hope in humanity. Hope in the face of disaster. And above all, hope in the goodness of people, no matter how unexpected. Epilogue. Years later, the Williams family would often gather around that photo on special occasions, remembering the night their world had almost been lost, and the man who had saved them. They never saw Keanu again, but they knew, without a doubt, that he was out there, watching over them, continuing his quiet mission of doing good in the world. And every time they saw him on the big screen, they would smile, knowing that the true hero was the one who had given them life, not fame. As the years passed, life in the Williams family had settled into a new rhythm. James and Sarah's bond had grown stronger after the fire. Their children, Lily and Ben, were growing up quickly, always mindful of the lessons they'd learned from the most terrifying night of their lives. They'd never forget the courage of the man who had saved them without a second thought. One chilly evening, as autumn leaves rustled outside, the family gathered in the living room, cozy in front of a roaring fire. The photograph of their old home, with Keanu standing in the background, was now a permanent fixture on the mantelpiece. It was a reminder of the unspoken bond they shared with the mysterious man who had risked everything for them. But that evening, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang. Sarah stood up, her curiosity piqued. It was late, and she hadn't expected anyone to visit. When she opened the door, she found no one standing on the doorstep, only a small, neatly wrapped package. She picked it up, her heart quickening as she noticed the familiar handwriting on the tag. It was addressed to the Williams family, but this time there was no return address. Inside the package was a leather-bound journal, the edges worn from years of use. As Sarah flipped through the pages, she was stunned to find that it wasn't just any journal. It was a collection of stories, handwritten accounts of various acts of kindness, bravery, and quiet heroism. Each story seemed to be about ordinary people in ordinary places doing extraordinary things. At the very end of the journal, there was a final note written in the same elegant script. To the Williams family, I hope this journal reminds you that goodness exists in unexpected places. Thank you for showing me that even in the darkest times, there's always light. Take care of each other, and remember, you are never truly alone. The handwriting was unmistakable. Keanu. A flood of emotion washed over Sarah as she read the words. She had long suspected that Keanu's kindness wasn't just a fleeting moment, but a part of who he was. This journal, this gift, was proof of that. He had never sought the spotlight, never expected thanks. And yet, he had left a part of himself behind in a way that would last forever. The family sat together, each of them holding the journal, knowing that it wasn't just a book, it was a piece of their story, one they would cherish forever. Later that evening, Sarah placed the journal on the coffee table. It was a symbol of the unspoken connection they had with Keanu, a reminder of the night their lives had changed forever. Though they may never see him again, his influence would live on in their hearts. And so, the Williams family continued their journey, stronger, more connected, and more aware of the small acts of kindness that could change the world. They knew, deep down, that Keanu's quiet heroism had given them something far more precious than just a second chance. He had given them a gift that couldn't be measured: hope, compassion, and the understanding that even the smallest of gestures can make a world of difference. Final reflection. Years later, as the family grew and their own children matured, they passed down Keanu's journal to the next generation. It was more than a collection of stories. It was a legacy of compassion, of the extraordinary power of kindness, and a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they don't even need recognition. They just need to do what's right. The Williams family had moved forward, always carrying the memory of Keanu and the journal with them. But as the years passed, something unexpected began to unfold, something they never anticipated. One spring afternoon, as Lily and Ben were volunteering at a local food bank, a young boy approached them. His clothes were worn, his eyes tired, but there was something about him that seemed familiar. He smiled shyly at Lily and Ben, and they could immediately tell he was different. I saw you guys on the news," the boy said hesitantly. "Your family. You were saved by the man who helped my dad." Lily's heart skipped a beat. "You mean Keanu?" she asked softly. The boy nodded, his voice quivering. "He helped my dad too when he was in trouble. He didn't want anyone to know, but I heard the story from someone who was there." Lily and Ben exchanged looks, realizing how far Keanu's influence had spread, how many lives he had touched without ever expecting anything in return. Over the next few weeks, more people came forward. Some shared stories of Keanu's acts, of kindness that they had witnessed firsthand. Others told tales of his quiet interventions in moments of crisis. There were stories from all over, small, seemingly insignificant acts of courage that had ripple effects on entire communities. Each story was different, yet all shared one common thread. Keanu had helped them when no one else could, and he had done it without seeking anything in return. It wasn't just about the big moments, like the fire that had almost taken the Williams family. It was about the quiet moments, the moments when someone was about to give up, and Keanu showed up at the right time, saying just the right words, or offering just the right help. As these stories continued to surface, the Williams family realized something profound. Keanu wasn't just a hero to them, he had been a hero to countless others. He was a living testament to the power of kindness, and his impact was like a pebble dropped in a pond, rippling outward, creating waves that reached far beyond what anyone could have imagined. One evening, as Sarah sat on the porch with James, reflecting on everything that had happened, she received an unexpected call. "Is this Mrs. Williams?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes," she replied, surprised. "This is Detective Harris. I've been looking into some old cases, cold cases, and we've come across something unusual. Do you remember the man who saved your family from the fire?" Sarah's heart raced. "Yes, of course." "We've found something," the detective continued. "It's not easy to explain, but it seems that Keanu Reeves has been connected to a series of events over the past few years, acts of kindness and intervention, and we believe that he's been involved in helping people in ways that no one would have known about. We've gathered testimonies from dozens of people who have never been able to thank him. And it's all starting to form a picture of someone who's been quietly changing lives for years." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had always known Keanu was extraordinary, but hearing it from someone who had been investigating his actions only deepened the mystery. It wasn't just the fire that had marked her family's life. It was everything he had done for countless others in silence. "Detective, "I don't think anyone can fully understand what he's done," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "But I know one thing for sure. He saved us, and now we're trying to pay it forward." As she hung up the phone, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Keanu had never asked for recognition, and he never would. But now, more than ever, it was clear that the world was slowly starting to realize the magnitude of his quiet heroism. Epilogue. The ripple effect of Keanu's kindness spread far beyond the people he helped directly. It began to inspire a movement, a movement of kindness, where people everywhere were committing small, selfless acts to make the world a better place. Inspired by Keanu, Sarah and James started a foundation in his honor. It wasn't about the fame or the recognition. It was about carrying on the legacy of quiet courage and compassion that had saved their lives. The Williams family continued to grow, their children becoming adults. But one thing remained constant: the memory of the man who had changed their lives forever. They lived their lives with the knowledge that kindness was not only the right thing to do, it was the thing that could change everything. And Keanu, wherever he was, would always be a part of their story, a silent hero whose actions had rippled out into the world in ways that could never be measured, only felt. As time passed, the Williams family became a symbol of resilience and hope, not just within their community, but far beyond it. Their story, intertwined with Keanu's quiet acts of heroism, had inspired countless others. More people came forward to share their stories of how Keanu had saved their lives, offered them a second chance, or simply been there when they thought all hope was lost. The foundation the Williams family had started in his honor had grown into something far greater than they could have imagined. They supported victims of natural disasters, funded community projects, and helped those who had nowhere else to turn. The foundation wasn't just a way to remember Keanu. It was a way to continue his work, to create ripples of kindness that would stretch across the world. But even with all the growth and the impact they were making, the Williams family still couldn't shake the feeling that they were meant to do more. Keanu had never sought recognition, yet his legacy had grown far beyond what any of them could have anticipated. One winter evening, just as Sarah was about to close the foundation's office for the night, there was a knock on the door. She opened it to find a small package sitting on the doorstep, once again addressed to the Williams family. With a mixture of excitement and curiosity, she opened it. Inside was a letter, an old, yellowed piece of paper with Keanu's handwriting. To the Williams family, I have watched you all grow, seen the love you've shared, and witnessed the impact you're making on the world. It was never about the recognition. It was always about making a difference when it mattered most. But now, I ask you to do one more thing. Keep the legacy alive. Not just in the big moments, but in the everyday acts of kindness. You've done it beautifully so far, but the world will always need more love. Yours in kindness, Keanu. Sarah stood still, the weight of his words sinking in. Keanu had asked them to continue his mission, not just as a family, but as a beacon of hope for everyone. The Williams family had become more than just survivors. They had become change-makers, lighting the way for others to follow in their footsteps. The story of their family and their connection with Keanu Reeves had come full circle. It wasn't just about the fire or the hero who saved them. It was about how a single act of kindness could start a chain reaction that rippled through lives, changing the world in ways unimaginable. As Sarah looked around the office, at all the faces of the people they had helped, the children who had grown up with the values they had instilled, she realized something profound. Keanu's impact would never truly end. He had given them a gift that would last a lifetime. And it was their turn to pass it on, to continue the legacy of hope, compassion, and quiet heroism that Keanu had started all those years ago.